Well, hello, everybody, and welcome once again. My name is Cesar Abate, your host, and this show is your regular reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land that next gig. So join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance starting right now. All right, everybody. So it's been a few weeks since the last episode, and I'm happy to bring Donna Weber here today to talk about onboarding. So let's say the organization that you work for signed a large contract with a new customer, which is fantastic. But now what, right? How do you ensure that this customer is happy and having their goals met by your products and services, right? So how do we onboard them into our services so they're satisfied enough to keep coming back for more? So today I have on the line Donna Weber to talk about just that. Now, Donna Weber is the world's leading expert in customer onboarding. For more than 2 decades, she's helped high-growth startups and established enterprises create customers for life. Donna is a recognized customer success thought leader, influencer, strategist, advisor, author, and speaker who gets to the heart of the matter. She is passionate about helping customers reach their goals because when customers win, you win. It's that simple. High growth companies hire Donna to increase customer retention, decrease time to customer first value, increase customer lifetime value, reduce implementation time and costs, increase product usage and adoption, and scale customer success organizations. Her new book and what triggered this whole conversation here today is called Onboarding Matters: How Successful Companies Transform New Customers into Loyal Champions. And Donna is talking to me today from her home, I believe, in California. Hi, Donna. Welcome to the Project Management for the Masses podcast.
Oh, thank you for including me, Cesar. I'm delighted to be here today.
It is so great to see you. So we were just talking about, I started here, that I'm now I actually work for a customer success focused organization. I think a lot of folks in the audience may not know what that means. So what is customer success as defined by today's trends?
Absolutely. So, as you know, we've been moving in more and more into a subscription economy, and so that means when we get a new customer, it's not just about closing a deal; it's about keeping the customer, because in that initial year, most companies don't make much money because of all the costs it takes for sales and marketing to bring in that new customer. So they might close a new deal, you might get a new logo, but you might actually be losing money in that first year. So even though you ring the bell, you hit the gong, everyone, you drink the champagne, it's great. But if they don't renew, your company could be in a death spiral. So the key now is not just to get new customers, but to keep them, and ideally to help them keep growing and expanding and buying more.
Right. In your book, you talk about in the past, especially in the software industry, companies would develop software and sell them in stores and boxes, and then all they
remember those days?
Yeah, or
you go to here in the U.S. we had Fry's. I don't know if you have Fry's in Canada, but we go to Fry's, and all the software would be there on the shelves, and you buy the box, and you take out a little disc.
Right.
Thanks for reminding me.
Right. So their goal was to get you to go and buy the box or buy into their ecosystem, just one big purchase, but not so much anymore. Now sometimes you don't even pay to start using something until you know that you like it. So obviously you want to make a good impression, so they come back and they pay. So how long do companies have usually to turn a new customer into a loyal user?
Well, it really depends on the product. So, for example, on my smartphone, if I download an app, I might have 90 seconds to get to some value. Otherwise, I may never look at it again. Some consumer products, you might have 90 minutes. But most of the companies I work with that are more of the business to business, more complex, high-tech software, I generally say around 90 days, and ideally you want to get customers to some value in 30 days. And because of this subscription economy we're in, we can no longer use hope as a strategy. And I talk about that in the book that, we can't just create this great sales process and guide customers along this awesome buyer journey. And then the deal closes, and then we just hope that they get some value from our products. We hope that they learn how to use them. And we hope that they, recommend it to others. We really need to define how we're going to drive that behavior, how we're going to get customers to value, initial value, lifetime value. And that's where customer success comes in. So now we have teams who are really dedicated to ensuring customers are successful. And with the idea that when our customers are successful, our companies are successful.
Right. It's a mindset shift, because it means it's not just a transaction, right? You're standing by the customer as they go along pursuing their goals with their services, right?
Yeah, and I would say not even just standing by that, you are a proactive guide for that. And I like to look at it, we're no longer just closing deals, we're opening relationships. So we're opening a whole partnership with the customer to guide them to use our products, but ideally not just to use our products, but to transform their businesses, to be heroes at their companies. Most people, most companies buy software products because they're looking to save time, they're looking to make more money, they're looking to save money, or they need to be compliant. So we need to really understand their goals and then make sure that they reach them, not just give them our product thinking that our product's so awesome that that's all they need.
Right. Now, companies that decide to really embrace this, especially if they've been in business for a while, usually that means a lot of changes. Right? They need to sometimes, org chart changes, and they need to create new departments, and they have to create projects, and that's the keyword I'm trying to get to make these things happen. So we have a lot of project managers listening right now or watching on YouTube. How do you think project managers, who are almost by definition an agent of change, how do you think they're positioned to help with customer success or implementing change towards customer success?
Well, let's see. There's a few ways that project managers can be part of the solution. One is realizing that the customers are people, not just projects. When we close an account, it's not just a logo, it's not just a customer, it's not just revenue, it's not just a project. Those are people. So we really need to take the time to engage with the people. And then also, when I interview the customers of companies I work with, those customers, those people tell me that they want to be held accountable, especially when, we talked about, you might have, 90 days of a long implementation. I work with a company, they have 24 weeks to fully implement their product with data migrations and customizations and APIs and all that fun stuff. 24 weeks. So you really want to take the time to understand their goals, their outcomes. Is there any value that you can drive them to? In that 24 weeks, is there anything we can do to start helping them get some quick wins? So they're not just sitting around going, why did we buy this product? Is it ever going to go live? Why are we paying for it when we're not using it yet? We don't want them even thinking those things. So areas I would explore are one, engaging with the person or the people, helping them to understand where they're accountable along that journey, giving them ideally leveraging some tools where customers have visibility into the project plans, the timelines, the milestones, and their accountability. And then also seeing if there's some quick wins so that they can reach along the way, so they're not just kind of sitting in a black hole wondering what the hell's going on. And we covered a lot there. We can unpack each of those if you like.
No, that's great. And I do have a few questions about that first impressions or first value coming soon. But one quote that I got from the book that really stood out to me was onboarding is the most important part of the customer journey. And I was like, what? I don't think it's looked at that way. It's something you have to do, right? But talk about that a little bit.
Well, most companies seem to think that every customer interaction has equal importance, equal weight. But the reality is, we're just talking about we're dealing with people. And in the book, I talk about the neuroscience of onboarding because the reality is, whether we like it or not, we have our brains and they get triggered, especially when things are new or different. And so even though it might appear to be that we're engaging with logical, smart people, the parts of the brain that deal with these new beginnings, which is onboarding, are those that trigger fear and doubt. So our brains tend to go to worst case scenarios. We tend to ruminate. We tend to create stories, usually negative ones. We don't usually worry about awesome things that might happen, right?
Right.
We worry about all the doomsday things. So, let's say I buy a new product. Let's say I staked my job or even my career on selecting your product. I'm the buyer and, the sales rep's awesome and close the deal. And then I'm just sitting around for 2 weeks and I don't hear from anybody. Well, guess what? I'm going to start ruminating. Oh shoot, I made a mistake. What did I do? I should have gone with the other one. I'm going to start creating all these scenarios in my head. So we don't want the people that we work with to even go there. So that's why we jump on them. I recommend even before the deal closes to show them the path to success. So they see here's the end of onboarding. Here's the end of the sales cycle. This is what onboarding looks like. Neuroscience shows that people need cognitive closure, which is helping them understand here's where the sales cycle ends and the customer journey begins. They need continuity between those relationships that they built with the sales teams and the post-sales teams. And so by proactively doing that, you're going to really help people to partner with you and be on your side. And the science shows that first impressions, what happens is, immediately when we meet someone, our brains start going friend or foe. Am I safe? Can I trust this person? And so they're making we make these judgment calls, whether they're realistic, accurate or not. We make those calls. And so, and then our brain does this, we just keep layering on top of that. So any subsequent interaction we use to verify whether that first judgment is, we use it as evidence that the first judgment was correct. So Cesar, let's say you and I have a great initial interaction. Let's say we meet next week, but you're in a bad mood. I'm going to probably say, oh, it's okay. He's probably tired because he's got something personal going on. I'm not going to hold it against him. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if that first interaction is not so good, well, I'm going to be looking for something negative to kind of confirm that bias moving forward. So that's why onboarding is so important, because it's not weighted equally. It's weighted very, very differently and much heavier weight than other customer interactions.
That's great. So you touched on that. I'd like to talk about this a little bit more, about starting the onboarding before even the contract is signed. And I wanted to think about, because I see this in real life, and it's, as much as we try to unsilo organizations, it feels like pre-sales is harder for some reason, right? It's like they're not our customers yet.
Don't talk to them. Get out of my my space.
Right. Sales
I know.
people are doing what they're doing, and we don't really know they're doing some magic over there.
They got their magic sauce.
Yeah. So sometimes, I almost see like an attempt to engage with us. We are, like, for example, if I'm the onboarding team, before the contract, as a sign of maybe a little bit of anxiety, like, let's take it easy, let's wait for the contract, and then we do that. So how do we get out of that mindset? Because I have to say, I'm deep into that mindset right now.
Yeah, well, I'll share with you what I find that works. Yeah. So, for example, earlier this year, I was working with a software. They provide software and hardware for medical practices, like the kiosks to check in when you go to the doctor. And so you probably have experienced that. Their sales teams were very reluctant to introduce onboarding during the sales cycle. And what they had in the past was that the implementation teams would come in and they start talking all this technical stuff, and their product's pretty technical, and they're integrating with, all these different like the healthcare, health industries, and all this data they have to integrate with. So it can get very technical and messy very fast. And they had the implementation analysts come in and start and meet the customers, and that didn't work because it was diving into the technical weeds. I don't agree with that. However, when you help, with that continuity we're just talking about, you bring this customer success manager in to talk big picture, to start building a relationship, to help customers see the path to success, you might actually close your deals faster. So you want to keep it high level. It's not just whether you engage, but how you engage. So initially, really high level, I recommend more high level basic visuals to help customers really understand what's coming. The company, I was working with a company that provides a marketing platform for real estate agents. And their CFO shared with me that he was looking at a product for like digital signatures. And the company during the sales cycle shared with them, here's your CSM. They had a website detailing the onboarding process. In the contract, they actually detailed, this is what onboarding timeframe is. Here's what we need from you. Here's what we do for you. And he said, if I may swear, so I can quote him exactly, he said, this company has their shit together. I want to work with them. So when we present it well, it's a differentiator. It proves to this customer that we've done this before. We know what we're doing. They can relax and take it easy because we're going to guide them to success. So it's not just whether you do it, it's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Just a glimpse of what it's going to look like. So they're
high level strategic relationship building. So then they get that continuity from the sales cycle to the customer journey. That's really important. It builds trust. It fosters confidence.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. So, project managers out there, start thinking about that. It sounds like a deliverable to me. How can we?
Yeah. Yeah. And if we can just dive into that a little bit more. So for example, project managers, you like often have all these awesome, project plans, Gantt charts, milestones, deliverables, and that's really important. I have my book details my orchestrated onboarding framework, which has 6 stages. And kickoff is stage 3. The implementation and adoption is stage 4. So what's happening in those first 2 stages is really showing things at a higher level. And I have an article about the visuals, and I can share the link with you, Caesar, to share with your audience. Because just sharing basic visuals really helps people to kind of understand the journey overall, where we are on the journey, where we've been, where we're going. I can't tell you what a difference it makes. So even though you've got all these great, dependencies and dates and all that, is there a way you can like create this high level? I do it with like the smart art in a presentation tool. I also use Canva. That's a great, and you can get that for free. But when I work with companies, we're not even implementing anything complex, right? But when I work with companies, I still found that people were confused. We're having these meetings, we're going through this framework that I developed. But people are still kind of like, where are we, where we're going? And the reality is they've got a million things going on with their jobs and their families and their lives. So I created a simple visual. I have 6 stages and I show them, here's the journey. And all I do is highlight the stage that we're on. And it calms them down so much. I can't even tell you. So before we dive into all these details, at the beginning of a meeting, I'll show them like we're in the define phase, we're in the design stage, we're in the execute stage. And it shows like we've done a lot already. And this is what, this is where we've been, this is where we are, this is where we're going. And I've really noticed it, even, through a Zoom meeting, how much it calms people down. It helps them to be present, and they kind of go, oh, like it grounds them. I highly recommend the visuals.
Okay, great. Now, this part here really spoke to me because I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people listening or watching. It's a quote here. The reality is that customer success teams are, quote, largely stuck in a reactive mode defined by the threat of churn. Churn. um, how do we get out of this? It's like we're trying to save this customer, right? Or trying to keep them happy. But at the same time, there's new customers coming in, and then we have to deal with all internal um, challenges with our platform, developing our own products and services, right? So, and it feels like everything else is more urgent. Like we have to save this relationship, we have to plug the bug, we have to do all these things. So, how do we focus on onboarding and customer success when everything else is on fire?
Well, I'm reading Wayne McCulloch's book called The Seven Pillars of Customer Success,
Okay.
and he defines customer success 1.0 as that very reactive time. And just like any startup, you're running around trying to do your best, and whatever hat needs to be worn, you throw it on. And as through any maturity curve is that you move from reactive and ad hoc to start defining processes and start being proactive. So that's where customer success overall as a field needs to move and is starting to move. So people are starting to get that we need to create processes and be proactive so that we're not firefighting in the first place. I mean, sure, there's always going to be some fires, but we don't want to be waiting for fires. And the reality is, as a field, we talk a lot about customer churn. But when everyone's firefighting, parachuting in the technical experts, or shipping off the executives, whether virtually or in person, to save accounts at risk, that is really exhausting. And at that point, we have to worry about employee churn as well. So, that's kind of a short-term thing, like when your company's in a startup phase, but that's no way to continue. So it's really important that we start building out scalable, repeatable, proactive processes, that every customer is not a special snowflake, that we start really looking at the 80/20 rule. Like, what's the what is the same, is there similar foundation we can take 80% of our customers down and build that out. We don't want to rely on if a customer has this CSM, customer success manager, versus that one, the ones that have a particular CSM are going to do well, and the ones that have others don't. We can't rely on that. We need to create proactive, prescriptive frameworks, and that's what the book is all about. And so, when I see a lot of issues happening with implementation and onboarding, I'm always looking at, well, what can we be doing upstream that's going to address those, and so we never get to those problems in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that developing onboarding is a good place to start, or is this for after the fact, for as an add-on to customer success?
I mean, the thing is, if you don't start with onboarding, you're forever chasing those customers, because
Sure.
they're not, they're not likely off to a good start. So it's going to end up taking so much more time and energy. I talked to a company today where they're spending an hour a day with their enterprise customers to resolve issues. This one person I talked to, he's spending an hour a day every day with one customer. So that's very time consuming. Well, yeah, it takes time to build out processes and maybe implement tools like project management tools to do that well. But it'll save you time down the road, and it means you can scale. You're not just throwing people at problems as well.
Great. Thank you. You also talk, I thought this concept was really, really interesting, and in how you talk about it, which is first value, right? And time to first value. Can you talk about those two for a minute?
Sure. So, especially when working with companies that have complex software and that may take time to implement. I like to explore what might be some initial value to drive customers to. So in the book, I talk about the trough of disillusionment, which is based on the Gartner. They have them. It's based on like the Gartner's analysis of new innovations, usually like new technology. There's this whole hype cycle, and people get really excited, but then by the time anyone really gets any benefit from it, there's like the early adopters. There's usually products kind of crash and burn, and then when the product finally meets expectations, there's this trough we all fall into, and then there's this hill we have to climb to get out of the trough. So ideally, we do not want customers falling into that trough. And even let's say your product takes, I'll give an example of this marketing platform. Their product took about 6 weeks to implement, and the customers are the real estate agents, and they are paying monthly. So they pay monthly, and like if the first 30 days, they're like, I've paid, I haven't gotten any value. Then they start pausing contracts and even canceling them, costing the company over $300,000 a year. All right. So there's a pain. So I talked about, what's some initial value we can drive the customers to. Even it might still take 4 to 6 weeks to get the platform all deployed. And the thing is that this company provides these awesome premium services for real estate agents that really sets them apart. It's not just their software. So we talked about, so the way they originally had it was they had the onboarding team and the implementation team would go kind of away and work on the platform. Customers are sitting around going, what's going on? I'm getting frustrated. They're in the trough. And then after the product is deployed, the CSM would come in and start building a relationship and driving customers to leverage their services and coaching. They have this awesome coaching and, all these great exclusive access to communities. So what we did was we moved the customer success manager to engage like within the first 2 days. And so as soon as the deal closes, we have an automated email that goes out to welcome the customer and start giving them access to these exclusive communities. Then the CSM starts that coaching like day 2. And so now the customer starts getting some value. It may not be the platform, but they're getting value through these awesome services and communities. Then from having these discussions around initial value, we realized, well, we got to sell that value, and the sales reps are so busy selling the platform. And so now this was transformational for the company. Now we need to like package and market and sell some of this initial value. So the customers are going, oh, great, I'm getting value, so that you set those expectations around the value they're getting. So now they're getting value. They're happy to wait those 30 days because they're making a difference already. And then we also front loaded a lot of the ways the implementation and onboarding teams needed to kind of access data and things so that they can roll out that product in 4 weeks versus 6 weeks. So those are some ways. But then the first value is just the start. Then, we want to get them like getting to maturity, sophistication, more complex use cases. So they're getting ongoing value and lifetime value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you ask good questions there. Like what's your company's first value? What's your organization's first value? What would it be? Give you pause, to think about that. Because the first knee-jerk reaction of all when they first log into your service, and you address that immediately is like, nope, that's not it. So it's a good question for everybody listening right now. The organizations you work with, think about what is the first value, right? And then time to first value is also important, right? You want to make that shorter. Right?
Yeah. So first is to understand what is first value, and it might be different for different products. Let's say your company has several products. It might be different for every segment of customer. You were saying, ask yourself the question. I also challenge you to ask your customers that question. What is there a magic moment, or is there a aha? Is there there was a point where you were thrilled that you bought the product? So it might be that once the data's migrated and you can see like this whole view of all your customers, or it might be some data-driven insights. And like, so, for example, one company I talked with, they said, well, we need training for our customers to load their data in the system, because that's where they always get stuck. And I said, well, how often do they need to do that? Oh, just once. I'm like, well, do it for them, take that barrier away, charge them for it, but do it for them. So let's say you gather the link to their data before the deal even closes. And then, you're working on it in the background. And by day 2 or 3, you've got the data in there, and now they can start to see things that they never had access to before. Like, that could be huge value.
That would be huge value.
Does it mean creating some canned reports so that your product goes live with these 3 reports everybody loves,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we have some of that going on in our organization with some of the products, but not all of them. And so this is a great insight and super validating for me to read. Cool. I'd like to end by talking about success plans. I think if you are in customer success, you've heard this term being thrown around. You might be using, you might have developed a success plan for a customer, but where does onboarding fit in that? Do we need an onboarding journey map, for example, or can it just be part of the overall success plan for a customer?
You mean like defining the journey in the success plan?
Yeah, like
Is that what you're saying?
the onboarding part, like as we bring in a new customer, for example, because a success plan will have objectives and things that we need to accomplish. Is it worth it to do the same on a sub level just for the onboarding part?
Um, no, no. The success plan is about like why they bought the product,
Right.
and you might have parts of the in the success plan that address the onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So you might include timelines or requirements needed, or let's say training they need to take, or risks around onboarding. Yeah, so I would include components of onboarding in there for sure. But the success plan is really about why that customer is engaged with your company. And I use success plans when I work with companies. So I found that I was working with companies, and I'd have all these discussions with the buyer, like the head of customer success, the chief customer officer, and we determine what's needed, what the objectives are. We determine all that, and then I start working with the team. And sometimes that buyer is involved, sometimes they're not. But at one company, this was last year, I started getting into trouble because I had made assumptions that the team I was working with knew these things that the buyer had shared with me, and guess what? They had it, and we ended up like doing this mad rush because there was this deadline that was never communicated, and these objectives that were not really understood. So I was like, oh my goodness, I got to follow my own practice here. So now I success plans. So during my kickoff meeting with new companies, I have a success plan, and I leverage the template that I provide in the book, and I have an article I wrote about success plans. So I'm happy to provide that link as well. And so I'll share just what I do. So I take that. I've created a proposal. I've defined objectives, metrics, timelines, things like that. I move those into the success plan. But in addition to that, I include like a RACI model, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So I really understand who's on the team. We defined risk management. And so let's say, what are the risks? Oh, we've got competing priorities. Everyone's busy. And then we also define an escalation process. And generally, that's the CEO's mobile number. And I have called that CEO's mobile number when there's been blockers and issues. So, we have all that agreement up front. We don't pretend like everything's going to be fine. And, we don't address that. People think, oh, we don't want to address that because we should be just in the positive, we should be positive, but no, we have these hard conversations. So now when things get stuck, when there's blockers, when there's delays and bottlenecks, we know how to address them. And when I have the whole team there, so I call it the core team when I'm working with companies, when I have the core team, they've had a chance to review those objectives, the timeframes, the metrics, and they'll give feedback. That's not realistic. Actually, it should be this versus that. And then now everyone's on board, everyone's aligned, and the partnership moving forward is so much more smooth, and things move more quickly because we all know what we're doing and why.
Awesome. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Even as you are working with companies, you are treating that relationship as customer success as well.
Yeah,
And
so I've created my own onboarding framework. It's more of a customer engagement framework, but I've created my own framework. I leverage success plans, and it really does. I got to tell you, it really does make a difference.
well, and not only that, people get value right away, right? Because they
Yeah.
can just, even if they can just take that and run with it if they want to. Like, oh, this is a great
Mm-hmm.
format. I'm just going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So they get value even before they meet with you. That's fantastic. Donna, thank you so much. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, what you're writing, where should they go?
We'll go to donnaweber.com. That's DonnaWeber.com. And there's a link to resources. And I have lots and lots of blogs, webinars, and podcasts. So you just dive in there. And then, of course, Onboarding Matters is a great resource. It's people have told me it's the most practical business book they've ever read. I can't tell you how many people told me they took it on vacation with them, which is just such a like, wow, a business book on vacation. I'm so impressed. I'm all about, I'm all about providing value. So there's valuable templates and resources to help you have impact immediately.
Awesome. And I'm one of those people. I took the book on vacation with me last week
You
to
did?
finish it. Yes. Really like that at the end of every chapter you have like almost like a blurb of what you just talked about, and then some questions and things that are actionable. So I agree. It's a great book to get you started on, even if you never heard of customer success. I think it's a great primer on that topic as
Thank
well.
you. Yeah, and in the back there's a glossary. So if some of these terms and it's also available on my website. If some of these terms are like, I don't know what you're talking about, Donna, then you can find the glossary and start learning.
Sounds great. Again, the book is called Onboarding Matters: How Success Companies Transform New Customers into Loyal Champions. And you can go to donnaweber.com. Donna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Caesar. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here today.